Hello, this is James Green of Uber Solar, and today's Zoom webinar or subject is solar technologies behind the meter. And hopefully by the end of it, whether you are sophisticated or just a beginner, you'll have a better understanding of the various different types of technology that are available to you to use at home or indeed in business. And I'm going to use a number of slides to assist in this area. And other than the potential technology difficulties which always seem to occur, hopefully it will all go according to plan. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you, and hopefully that will be working now. And the first thing to look at is that yes, well, there's a problem here already. Okay, well, there are two types of solar. We have basically solar electric, which is referred to as solar PV or solar photovoltaic, and that is used for generating electricity from a solar panel. And then we have solar water heating or solar thermal, and that heats water and basically that saves electricity. And saving energy is always cheaper than generating it. So starting off, we have a example of a domestic system, quite a small system on a house, but typically the cost for a solar PV system will range from around 80,000 to £500,000, and then you can obviously go up and up and up from that. And as well as the PV panel sitting on the roof, you'll have the inverters which convert the direct current into alternating current, and that is either used or stored in a battery, which in the example is shown here in a large battery pack. So in a very brief detail with regard to solar PV, you can have a grid-tied system where you basically have no batteries or a very few, and if the mains goes off, so does your solar PV system, and it is basically the cheapest type of system. That's called grid-tied. You then have a hybrid system that includes batteries, and when the mains goes off, your system continues to work and it continues to provide power to the home, either drawing on the PV or the batteries or a combination. And the batteries almost double the cost of the system. And then finally, we really have an off-grid system where there are no mains at all coming in, only batteries and the PV systems. And that can be extremely expensive depending on the size of the system. Moving on to solar water heating, residential systems basically will range from as little as 12,000 to a very large system as shown in this image of around 50,000, which is 96 tubes on 450 litres. And what I'm going to try and do here is to show you the various types of solar water heater. There are a variety of types, and I will take you through that. In looking at the first one, we're going to look at the low pressure solar water heater. Now, the low pressure solar water heaters were the ones which, or are the ones which you normally see on low income homes or RDP homes. The government did a large rollout. They're normally 100 to 110 litres. They have evacuated tubes going straight into the tank. And importantly, they're vented to the atmosphere so they can't get hotter than 100 degrees, which high pressure ones can. Not really very suitable for anybody who has high pressure water because they can't be used for a shower because you can't mix high pressure and low pressure water. The only water which will come out is the cold, which will be high pressure. So they're also much cheaper than the high pressure units because they're much less sophisticated. In terms of the high pressure types, we have those which have the tanks on the roof. And on my mouse, you'll see an example of a close coupled thermosiphon system, which is using evacuated tubes. We then have, again with my mouse, an integrated system where you have tubes going into the tank. These will be evacuated tubes with heat pipe risers. You then have another example of a tank on the roof using a flat plate collector. And finally, there is a version which you don't see very often in South Africa, which is sort of an integrated tank unit all in one. So essentially, which is really a combined unit. So what we have is you have solar collectors, which are either heat pipe risers, as in these two examples, or you have flat plates, and I'll come to those. As a general comment, I personally just like the tanks being on the roof because I don't think they're aesthetically attractive. Body corporates are very reluctant to have them, mainly for the same reason. And if you have a large tank, it may require roof reinforcement because the tanks were never designed, sorry, the roofs were never designed to bear a huge amount of weight. And the 300-litre system will be about 475 kilos, so a lot. We then have the other type, which is a high pressure unit, which is a split pumped indirect. This is our preference as Uber Solar. It's the only type which can be used with retrofits. The geyser, rather than being on the roof, as in the other slide, can be anywhere. It can be on the ground, it can be on a wall, it can be in the roof void. And because it's split, the solar collector can be matched to the tank size, and using a pump actually always increases the performance over a thermosiphonic system where the water is just being used by heat, and that's because of increased turbulence. And essentially a high pressure unit has all of the advantages and none of the disadvantages of the other systems. Now, when we come to solar collectors, everybody in the industry will argue which is better and which is worse, etc., etc. But frankly, for you as the consumer, it doesn't really matter. Over 95% of the world uses the glass evacuated tube types. And that's because they're very efficient and cheaper to manufacture than flat plates. They're either filled with water or with an aluminium sleeve and a heat pipe riser, which is used as the heat transfer medium. They don't suffer in freeze conditions. However, there is a problem with the heat pipe riser type, which I've got my mouse on here, where you have the tube, you have an aluminium sleeve inside it, and you have this bulb at the top. And inside the riser, you will have either a very small amount of distilled water or more commonly acetone. And acetone will boil at about 59 degrees Celsius and turn into a gas. And this bulb is inserted into a female port within the heat exchanger, and very, very high temperatures can be achieved, up to 275 degrees in stagnation. And that means that the water which is going through this pipe to and from the geyser can turn into steam. And steam under pressure can cause potentially a lot of problems, not only to the fittings, but to the tank when the system is turned on. On the other side, we have a flat plate collector. Now, flat plate collectors are much older technology. They have direct and indirect systems in inland areas in South Africa. Because it's potentially a freeze area, they have to be filled with glycol, which is a vegetable antifreeze. And unless that happens, and you have to do it every 18 months to 2 years, which will cost about 1,500 rand, you'll end up with a system which, first of all, doesn't work, and secondly, breaks, and then you have to throw it away. They can also suffer in stagnation. They're not as bad as the heat pipe riser type, but they can hit around 165 degrees if the system's not being used. So again, can cause problems. So in summary with these, you have retrofits and complete systems, and they all do the same thing, which is to heat water. And how do you choose which one? And what you have to look at is the value for money. And that means essentially the reliability, the safety, the longevity, the return on investment, and the payback period. Because essentially you're comparing like with like in terms of they're all doing the same thing, heating water. And how do you do that? You have to calculate a number of things, which in our case, we tell you, but most other solar water heater suppliers will not. You have to calculate the payback point, i.e., when do you recover the cost of your investment from the savings that you're achieving in kilowatt hour energy. And that you just have to take the deemed kilowatt hour saving and the notional value of a kilowatt, which today in May 2020 is around £2.30 to £2.40. You can then calculate the investment return on investment. You can look at the cost of running this system versus electricity, and it's going to be dramatically less. And you're seeing returns on investment of sort of 400 to 1,000%, depending on the system. And you also got to look at the alternatives. So in our opinion, in terms of looking at the summary, and we look at the two types, you've got solar PV, which is really a lifestyle investment rather than financial. That's because the payback will be typically between 8 and 14 years. And that's a very long time, but it is a great thing to do. So don't get me wrong, we're not knocking it at all. It's just that the payback is a long time. So it's a lifestyle. And more recently, we've seen solar PV being promoted for heating water. And I can tell you categorically, it's not the way to go. It's about double as expensive. The only place in the world that I'm aware that it is quite successful is in Australia, where they do use solar PV and they run the solar PV system to the electric element in the geyser, but they are receiving very substantial rebates and subsidies, which is one of the reasons they're selling a more expensive system. In solar water heating, it is effectively a no-brainer. You've got to pay back typically as little as 20 months to 36 months. You need to choose your system based on performance, reliability, and longevity. And in the case of Uber Solar, we give you a bigger bang for your buck in every size, both retrofit and complete systems. In other words, we're giving you better performance. So the next steps are for you to get a quote, call us or chat on WhatsApp on our telephone number 074 139 2859. There's a lot of information on the website. You can email us and ask any questions, and also you can watch numerous other educational videos which we have. And with that, I'd like to say thank you for listening. Whatever you do when you go solar, you have to be informed and make the decision based on what you have learned. And thank you very much indeed. And I look forward to chatting to you in another video. Thank you. Bye-bye.